Gospel according to St. John.
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you.
Be attentive. At that time, Jesus decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no guile." Nathanael said to Jesus, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You shall see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened, and the angel of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man."
Glory to you, O Lord. Glory to you. The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you.
Please be seated. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory to God.
Good morning. If you guys want to pull chairs out from in there and pull more in here, you can. I give you my permission and my blessing. One of the Orthodox theological precepts we must first understand is the word orthodoxy itself. Today we celebrate the Sunday of Orthodoxy. But what does that mean, the Sunday of Orthodoxy? What exactly is that saying? If we remember right, orthodoxy, the actual word orthodoxy, means right thinking. So when you are an Orthodox Christian, you are a right-thinking Christian. Correct. Not right or left, what we've heard, right? Correct thinking. Correct thinking and correct understanding. But how does one do that? Those men that the writer of the Hebrews writes about today in the Old Testament starts out with Moses, and then he talks about Jephthah and Samson, and he talks about Gideon, and he talks about all these heroes that we read about, hopefully you've read about, in the Old Testament. And these men, these heroes, did something spectacular with their lives. Of course, they were all broken people. They were all people that needed and lacked one major thing, right? Of course, when the Holy Spirit came upon them, they didn't have what we have today. Today, we live in the time of when Christ was crucified, and we live in the time when he was resurrected. And we live in a time when the ascension and the day of Pentecost came. When we get baptized, like when we saw today with Priscilla being baptized, the Holy Spirit illuminates us. Of course, as time wears on, our thinking gets a little bit clouded. Our thinking gets a little bit distorted. We've talked about it many times. As we get older, we somehow, and even myself, I begin to realize, as I think back to all the movies that I watched and all the music that I listened to, all the things that I did, and as the internet and computers started coming out, all these things, right? And what is TV called? Programming. What is the internet called? the net, the web, right? All these things oftentimes burn themselves into our minds. For people that struggle with pornography, even when you start going the right direction, your mind, those pornographic images are filtered and filed in the back of your mind somewhere, and Satan will pull those images out when you are trying to walk that godly line, when you are trying to walk God's will. And all the movies that were violent, all the things that we've done and said, all those things throughout our life, when our mind wasn't filled with Christ, it was being filled with the enemy. Satan has a distinct way of doing what he has been doing for centuries. Since the Garden of Eden, he has been able to convince people to do whatever he's wanted them to do. But how do we stop those things? I mean, think about some of the last few months that we have seen some of these concerts that are happening, like the halftime show at the Super Bowl and some of these different concerts. I saw one specific concert that they have this huge banner, electronic banner, behind the stage. You know what it flashed across the stage? The word Satan. It was quick. And you had to actually pause it in order to see it, but that word Satan flashed just long enough. And I remember, I think some of you probably remember the movie The Exorcist. How many of you remember the movie The Exorcist that came out? Do you know and do you realize why that movie was so powerful? That movie was powerful because what they did in The Exorcist is they would take frames of that movie and they would flash demon faces on just one frame. You couldn't see it with your eyes, but your intellect could see it. So throughout the movie, demon faces would flash. It's kind of like what they did at the beginning when they had flashes of M&Ms going across the bottom of the screen and flashes of Coke going across the screen. I'm hungry. And think about all the things, the commercials that we see. We get irritated about them, but how many things have we remembered? Like my son this morning, or yesterday, he brought a pack of Kool-Aid, right? And he says, Mom, what is this? This water jug that goes through walls. Well, how many of us remember that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Those things are burned, right, in our mind, right? The big, huge guy jumping through the walls. Or those things like, where's the beef? For Wendy's, right? That woman forever burned in our mind. Those things that we remember, Satan will bring whatever he can to our mind. This morning while I was in prayer, I'm thinking to myself, and I've got a Queen song playing in my mind. I'm like, where did that come from? So I had to fight using the Jesus prayer just to keep my mind focused on my prayer in the morning. Because while my mouth is saying the prayer, if my mind isn't engaged with it, it goes wherever the enemy leads us to go. So, the Orthodox precept is the word phronima. That word phronima means the mind of Christ, right? These people that we hear about in the Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, they had the mind of Christ. Moses, it starts out with in this reading today, Moses was a man who, right, was saved from the enemy, was raised by the enemy, and brought up in the enemy's household. So that way he knew what to do when he went into the court of the Pharaoh when God had called him. It almost seems like God knows what he's doing, right? God always knows what he's doing. God always knows when he calls those people that he knows what they will become because he can read their heart. He can tell their mind. But it wasn't until after Moses murdered somebody and he willingly became in bondage in order for him to freely become free. Truly become free. And when he went, he stood on Mount Sinai and he encountered God, the Trinity, right? Remove from thy feet thy sandals, for where you stand now is holy ground. I am going to send you. I'm going to send you to deliver my people. That same message has been going out to the people of God for centuries. for people that are called to the priesthood, to being pastors, or whatever else that they are called to do, if they truly are sincere about their faith, they will start attaining the mind of God. And if they don't, they will be eaten up and spit out. Because Satan, what he does, he's like a roaring lion that goes to and fro, waiting for us to make a mistake and to devour us. But we have this gift in the church, right? As we start attaining the mind of Christ, as we start attaining this right thinking, the Orthodox thinking, right? Again, I'm not trying to be arrogant with the Orthodox faith. I'm talking about the word itself, Orthodox thinking. When you start thinking correctly about all these things, you will start being able to battle the enemy and be able to stand firm on the ground that you have been given through Christ's blood and his sacrifice. That day on the cross, when he was sacrificed for our sins, when he became man, you got to remember, today, of course, a lot of times people think the Sunday of Orthodoxy, the triumph of icons. That's not all it's about, right? The icons are just a small portion of the triumph of today, right? What did Jesus do when he came? He became man. Oftentimes, we think in our mind that our body and our spirit are something separate. And we often don't understand when we die and when we rise again, we're going to be united and perfected just like Christ was. When he laid in the tomb for 3 days, he wasn't just sleeping. He went down into Hades and then continued to work. Because for the saints, for those who are the church triumphant, it doesn't end. When we are resurrected, when we are brought to Christ, when we stand again before him in Judgment Day, and we are with him during Christ in heaven, when we are asking these people to intercede for us, God has given us a way for us to be connected with him. Through our flesh, through the things that we oftentimes fight so hard against. We must understand that our flesh and our spirit are connected. They are connected. And through the wisdom of Orthodoxy, through the wisdom of the church, what did Christ do? He became man. He was hungry like us. He was tempted like us. He went through all the things that we go through. But the difference is that he had literally the mind of Christ. But as he was man, he took on man and all of the weaknesses that we have. He took complete weakness and he joined it with complete and perfect power. Because through our flesh, we can do a lot. We have a lot of the saints that show us that no matter what they were doing to those people, no matter if they were torturing them, whipping them, throwing spears in them, shooting arrows at them, crucifying them, cutting parts of them off, that no matter what, they were glorifying God for the things that were happening to them because they were just getting a little taste of what Christ went through for them. Christ took on every single thing that we have ever done. And that moment in time, that day the crucifixion happened, that encapsulates every one of us. That day in time, it's the infinite who became finite. That moment in time, when he is on the cross, and every time I fail and every time that I sin, he feels that pain. Every time that I make a poor decision, he feels that pain because my mind was not the mind of Christ that day. One must unite in will, thought, and action with God's will, thought, and action. I'm going to say that again. One must unite in will, thought, and action to God's will, thought, and action. We who are Christians, who believe that Christ died and rose again, who ascended to heaven, who was born to the Virgin, all those things that we read in the Creed, when we see all those things happening, when we see all those things in our heart, it doesn't matter what this world throws at us, Christ will give us the strength, because through him all things are possible. All things are possible. The last weeks before today, we celebrated, and I use that word loosely, but we should be celebrating that. We celebrated the Last Judgment. How do we celebrate the Last Judgment? Well, one of our petitions says it very clearly. Every time we say it, it is the great and dreadful day of judgment. Because some of us, it's going to be great. And others, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible for some of those people that have not acknowledged Christ. Because their mind was brought over and handed to the world, and they refused to budge. I have had friends of mine throughout my life. I've been friends with some of these guys that for 30 years. And you know what happens? They have not budged from that moment from when I knew them in high school. They have never progressed. They have never become anything different. They've remained the same. But nonetheless, some of them are still in my life. And every once in a while, I get a chance to minister to them and to speak to them about Christ. And it's up to them, just like it's all up to us. As we begin to unite with Christ, right? Jesus Christ, our mind of Christ, right thinking. As we begin to unite with Christ, we begin to purge all the things that don't belong in our lives. The things that we found so important one time. I remember as I was growing up, every single Tuesday, I was at Best Buy buying a Blu-ray movie that was coming out. I looked on Blu-ray.com. I looked at the best reviews. I wanted the Buku edition. I don't know if you guys still use that word, Buku edition, but it's the best one with all the bells and whistles, all the commentaries and everything. I would go through and read those things, and I would spend time reading those things. And you know what? All my movies are in boxes, and they're in storage right now because I just don't care about those things anymore. Because Christ has replaced those things that I needed at one time with something else. With the virtues that Christ has given me, I begin to understand His will in my life. I begin to understand the thoughts that I need to be thinking, and I need to understand the actions that I need to be taking. Because every action that I do, everything that I say, everything that I have in my life should be glorifying God. Especially now, I have felt in the last 2 or 3 weeks the weight of what it means to be a priest. Because not only will I be judged according to what I have done, but according to the things that I have not done. The things that I have not done, the things that I have not said, in fear of repercussion that my parishioners may leave and that the people may take away the money that they may have. Trust me, it's crossed my mind because you know why? Because all of my life, all the Orthodox churches that I've ever been to, that's what it's been like. The priest becomes the main fundraiser. The priest becomes the main person going out trying to raise money. And if he says something incorrect, those people will not only leave, but they will take their money with them. And Satan burned that thing into my mind. But you know what? I have realized, my mom helped me with this a couple days ago. She said if people are meant to stay, they will stay. And if people are meant to leave, they will leave. Because if you truly want to have an Orthodox understanding, you will find a church. Whether it be here or whether another church, you will find a church. An Orthodox church. Because I truly believe out of everyone, we are the closest there is to the truth. Because even now, we are slowly starting to get a little bit of stuff creeping into us. And we've got to stay strong and not allow the darkness to creep in. But throughout the centuries, we have seen heresies and heretics and apostates all come trying to destroy the church. And as time wears on, fewer and fewer people truly believe in God. We must truly believe in God. It's not enough to love God. You must fear Him. Because if you truly fear God, you will understand the awe that God is. God is awe. God is a God of justice. God is a God of wrath. And He's a God of mercy. And He's a God of love. And He's a God of peace. He is encapsulated in all those things. But the justice and the mercy and the love and the wrath that He has is not like our mind. He uses the mind of Christ. He uses the mind of God. When Jesus came onto this earth, when Jesus came, He did exactly what He said. He loved the Lord his God with all of his heart, all of his soul, and all of his mind, and all of his strength. And he loved his neighbor as he loved himself. Because he is God, he is love, he loved himself, and therefore he loved all of us. And when he loved all of us, he did set himself aside, carried that cross, and took it to Golgotha for us. That way, we have freedom. But the freedom that the world wants to give us, the freedom that the world offers us all the time, you got to remember what Jesus' words are, right? The road to destruction is wide. It's inviting. It has the neon lights. It has all the things that we want. It has the movies. It has the music. It has the pornography. It has the magazines. It has all the things that are calling it to do. It even has the sicknesses. It has the broken marriages. And it has all these things. I heard an awesome statistic. And I think I've used it before, but I'm going to use it again. When the space shuttle comes in to land from space, it has to be precise. Because if it is even 1 degree off, 1 degree, how much is 1 degree? When it comes down to Earth, it's 4,000 miles off course. 4,000 miles. How far are we off? How far are we off course? And if you think that you're even 1 degree off, you need to reconsider, just like I do every day, feeling the weight of the cross. But do not fear, for Christ has conquered. Christ came, he saw, he conquered. He won the day, he conquered Satan, he conquered death and hell, so we could find freedom in him. The freedom that the world offers, which is very easy, it's wide, it's inviting, it's easy to attain, and gives us bondage. But the freedom that Christ offers is very hard to find. But you know what's in the middle of it? A well used root where the tip of the cross is being dragged through the path that leads to life. It is narrow. The road is narrow, and it is hard to find. Some days it's close. Some days we may cross onto it. Some days we go back and forth to it. But the only way that we can truly find that is that if we submit ourselves to God. Not what we think we need to submit ourselves to God. We need to have right thinking. We need to have the mind of Christ. In order for us to have the mind of Christ, we need to learn what Orthodoxy teaches. You think fasting is not important? Who here thinks fasting is not important? Because at the beginning of time, when Adam and Eve were in the garden, guess what? He instituted fasting. You can have everything you want, but the only thing that you can't have is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's a fast. He's telling them you need to resist yourself from taking these fruit. And if they would have actually stood and obeyed God, we would have not been in this case before. But is that beautiful hymn, the hymn of St. Andrew, the canon of St. Andrew that we sang for the first 4 days of Lent? Some of you got to experience it a few days. I am nothing compared to Adam. He has one sin. How many more have I compounded over that? Over that. And yet, even though I was dead, I was found and now made alive again. Even though I was lost, I have been found. Christ has came to conquer us. And if you truly want the mind of Christ, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. Today we got to baptize Priscilla, and she was illumined. And her parents, her grandparents, the godparents have a unique opportunity to begin training her in the ways of Christ. Not giving her an iPad, not putting a phone in her hand, not sitting her in front of the TV. That stuff's easy. That stuff is incredibly easy. And I will tell you this right now, I'm guilty of it too. There's been some days where I am just so tired of my son because I homeschool him. Just get out of my face. I need to rest. I need to tire. Instead of keep on grinding and fighting through to teach him who the mind of Christ is supposed to be. when he called Nathaniel, when he called them guys like we read today, follow me. The same invitation is for all of us. The same invitation is for every single one of us. Follow me. I am trying myself, and I mean this humbly as possible because I fight with my pride all the time. I am fighting because I have felt the weight of my judgment coming upon me, knowing that I will be judged for every single person that sits in this room, knowing that if I have not said and done the right things, and I have led anybody astray, that I am going to be judged for those things. And I pray that God has mercy on me. And I want that mind of Christ. I want to be able to be in union with him and to glorify him through everything that we have done. In his mercy, he gave us the icons to understand. He gave us the body and blood so we could taste. He gave us the candle so we could see. He gave us the hymn so we could hear. He gave us the incense so we could smell, because he knows how close our mind and our body are connected to each other. And therefore, he has used the earthly medium in order to glorify himself in us. Let us praise the name of the Lord today and understand what true orthodoxy truly means. And if you have questions, ask. If you are struggling with something, go to God and say, help me understand these things that I'm stumbling upon. Because if you truly want to find the answer, you will look. You know how? You will find 2,000 years of people called church fathers that have lived and died and ate and breathed these things in order for us to truly understand. And there's still church fathers coming, and there's still church fathers being produced because they love God and they want to teach their people who God is. Let us glorify and praise the name of the Lord today.
Amen.